Joe Natoli.
You're a pointer, man. Sorry, just tell me to settle down. I know that guy. Awesome. All right, my name is Joe Natoli. The short version is this. I ran my own company called Natoli Design Group for 10 years. Doing all sorts of things. At the time, we just called it design. Okay? But everything that we know today as from user experience to brand strategy to user interface design to all these things, all right, that make up the experience that people have with things, that's what I learned in college, that's what I did, it's what I do now. So to me, it's all the same stuff. Design is design is design is design is design. You have to consider what it is, who it's for, why they want it, what the value is to them, and what the residual value is to you. Okay? All the same stuff. In 2007, I sold my company to a tech firm called Mind Over Machines, helped them establish a user experience practice, got bored in about 4 years, and now I'm back on my own again, doing what I love, which is helping people succeed. Okay? So I'm going to go quick tonight because I talk a lot and I have a lot to say, and I think it's all really important. I'm going to move quickly, but understand that I'm happy to hang out afterwards, okay, after this is all said and done, for any questions anybody wants to hit me up for anything. All right, so what I'm going to talk to you tonight about is user experience strategy. Just feel free to substitute the word user for customer. Customer experience, user experience, same thing. It's all about value. There was a retirement planning organization, okay, that decided, I want to say once upon a time, they decided that, hey, we could have a whole new business channel if we put our site online. What was driving this is the fact that they had a very complex, as you can imagine, right, with anything involving financial services, it's a very complex sign-up enrollment process, okay? It's difficult. Inevitably, when people would get the packets delivered to their homes, and the first thing they would do is get on the phone and make somebody in customer service walk them through it. Total cost, all said and done, was about $200 a pop. Now, multiply that times thousands of calls daily, and you sort of see, what the issue becomes here. So this whole website plan relied on the idea that, hey, if we get usage and people are actually using it and like it and can walk through the entire process, we're going to save a lot of money. To them, this was a can't-lose proposition. Why? Because their research told them that for every instance of online, what they're calling self-service, was a little over a penny. Right? From $200 to a penny. Simple math. We get that. Now, they costed out what it was going to take to design and build the site that they wanted. That's everything, from front end to business logic to back end, database work, et cetera, et cetera. 1.3 million. However, year one, again, we can't lose. There's no way we can't see some really massive cost savings. So from there, project gets green lit and they go. They go right into design and development. They iterate, they gather everybody they know, the smartest people in the room, right? They put it together, they say it's got to be this, it's got to do this, it's got to do this. And they've got all kinds of things. They got personalized account and educational info. We got real-time market data. We got a mobile app, right? We got all these bells and whistles, and we got a $750,000 marketing campaign that's bringing thousands of people to this site every day. Okay? They get to the home page and they take the very next step, which is they call customer service. Okay? That's a big problem in and of itself. Now, let's revisit this little ROI calculation. So between website design, development, and marketing campaign, we spent $2 million already. Right? Now, the customer call support costs that we already had, we're still spending the same amount of money. Now, we've got more customer service calls because no one understands how to get through the process, and that's costing us about $34,000 or $3,400. $3,400,000. Math wasn't my strong suit. So we're in the hole for about $7 million. Right? That's a big number. This is the point when I get the call. We don't know what's going on. We don't know how we got here. We know that we're in a lot of pain and we need some help. Fine. So we get everybody together, okay? And I have to sort of mentally and emotionally prepare myself for this, right? Because it's painful. You know, I feel for these people when I walk into these situations. So they talk, I listen. They tell me what their processes were. They tell me how they got from point A to point B, as it were. They tell me why they did what they did. And everybody at the table has a very different opinion, right, as to what they did and why. And of course, there's also some arguing happening while I'm there. So I ask what I call Pepto Bismol question number 1. Do you know what a Pepto Bismol question is? It's the kind of question that causes somebody to make the kind of face that says that they really need some Pepto Bismol because they can't imagine how they didn't think of that. Number 1 is, did you ask customers about what they felt they needed to be able to do? Here are the looks I get. Courtesy of some wonderful stock photography. Problem number 1, all right? The majority of people that they were targeting were somewhat new to the idea of retirement planning, okay? These were folks who were at an advancing age and they were sort of new at this, all right? To a lot of them, you know, getting a CD at the bank, right, certificate of deposit, like this was their idea of like life savings. Like they're getting their 1.6% and like that's their deal, okay? This is a whole new paradigm for them. Not only do they need to understand what the registration process is and what exactly they're agreeing to at every step and where this information is going and how safe it is, you know, they're not even understanding the internet sort of in and of itself. Like, how do I do this? All right, so here's big mistake number 1. So I ask question number 2, which is, and here's the mistake. What kind of research did your user experience or user interface teams, because I'm assuming somebody designed it, right? Somebody sat in a room and they had some strategy and, you know, what did you guys do? Designers? Interface, user experience? Huh. All right, their IT department designed and developed the website. There were no user experience professionals, there were no usability professionals, there were no information architects, there were nobody. This is the answer I got, okay? 2 programmers who were pretty good with graphics handled the UI. This was the other big question, or big thing that came up. Said, well, we brought a designer in after, you know, we had built everything to sort of pretty it up. And that's a hot spot for me. Karen knows this. You know what this is? This is decoration. That's not design. That's decoration. And the big difference between design and decoration is that design has a lasting substantive value. Decoration is aesthetically pleasing, but there isn't necessarily any return on investment to be found on decoration. Okay? So, last chance, right? Because I'm feeling terrible about this, and I'm like, okay, so I ask this question because I want to throw them a bone, right? So I say, did you show a prototype? Did you build something? Did you put it in front of people? You know, and ask questions. Did you get any feedback before you did this? Everybody throws up in unison. All right, and I'm telling you, and I was talking with Amy about this. This was one of the most surreal experiences of my entire life. Okay, and I'll probably never forget it. So they got there because, like a lot of folks, all right, they sort of did what they know how to do, all right, and that is, we've got this sort of set of people, and they're used to working in a very certain way, so why can't we just apply that to a product and go, right? This is a lean startup group, right? So everyone's familiar with lean principles and agile development and all these kinds of things. And they're all very, very good theories. But you have to constantly check yourself along the way to make sure that you're solving the right problems, number one, and make sure that you're doing the right things in order to solve those problems. Okay, so what do we do about that? If you forget everything else, I'm going to make a point that I want you to remember. And this is really important. And I say that because I've been working with startups for the entire 20 years of my career. And this is sort of a problem, okay? It runs rampant. Everybody's familiar with the idea of form follows function? Right? Raise your hands. It's bullshit. When it comes to what you're doing, when it comes to putting a product on the market, it's bullshit. Form does not follow function, and I'm going to explain to you why. If form actually followed function, all right, functionality would be it. What is it? It's a pair of jeans. One size fits all. Aesthetic considerations would be absolutely secondary to functional. We don't care if it fits you, put it on your body, you're not naked anymore, shut up. All right? Every functional element would ultimately have one and only one design. And of course, I'm oversimplifying, okay? But the prescriptive interpretation of form follows function leads to things that are essentially the equivalent of what you're looking at right here. In the online world, in terms of software, systems, from enterprise systems all the way down to mobile phone apps, are rife with this. All right? Here's the reality check. And this is the part that I want you to remember, and there will be a quick summary. Here's what really happens during the scope of any project, and I don't care what you're building. Okay? Whether it's a retail product, an online product, whatever. You've got to deal with several things. There are audience needs. You've got to deal with what your client wants, or what you want if you're the client, right? You've got some degree of ethical obligations. You've got everybody's aesthetic inclinations that's involved in a project, right? Everybody has a vision for what this should be, what it should look like. You've got material properties. What are we making this out of? What's the technology stack? Cultural presuppositions, language, color, imagery, functional requirements. What does it physically have to do? And of course, there's the big three: time, budget, and resources. Every single one of these are forces that act upon what you're doing. So the reality is that form does not follow function. What really happens is that every force that you are exposed to, right, in the cycle of creating or building or designing or developing anything, evolves the form of what you're doing. That's what dictates form. Everybody's free to disagree. But this is what experience is taught, and a lot of other people too. So where do we start? We start with strategy. Okay? There are questions that have to be asked. Number one is what your focus is on. Right? What's worth doing? What's worth spending the time and energy on? What's going to resonate? What's going to bring value back to us as an organization? What are we creating? What is it? Right? If you have a reason for trying to do something, you also have to know what it is. How we would define it. What value does it provide? This is important. The way I define user and customer experience is that what I typically say to people is it's a value loop. Okay? When it's done right, value goes out to the consumers or the customers or whoever's using what gets put out there. And if that value goes out to them, it comes back to you. If the value doesn't go out, it doesn't come back either. Finally, you got to figure out scope. How do we deliver this? How are we going to do it? That big list that we just looked at, all those things. How do all those things affect what we're about to do? So the first question is, what's worth doing? Well, this is simple, and for a lot of people, this is a variation of Business 101. All right? What's important, and what's feasible? What can we actually pull off? You have to, and it doesn't matter whether you spend a day, a week, a month. Time is irrelevant. but you've got to do this exercise somehow. And what's most important is the stuff that lands up here in this quadrant. What are we creating? I've seen umpteen thousand projects fail because of this. You got a client who says, okay, well, we're building this. And the project manager goes, well, yeah, it's this. Team lead says it looks like this. Here's the thing, you get all three of these people in a room. Everybody sounds like they're singing the same song. Often, once you get into the project and you actually start putting the rubber to the road, you find out that everybody has a slightly different idea of what they thought this was going to be. The things that you're going to hear about tonight expose that sort of at an earlier stage, okay, and enable you to identify some of those gaps before they happen. What value does it provide? Okay? I met with a startup last week who has a phenomenal idea. Okay? They've got a great idea, but it's a variation of something someone already has. All right? So in this respect, it's still a fruit. Different kind of fruit. It's different color, tastes different, but it's still a fruit. So the advice to them is, if you're going to go out there and you're going to put this alongside your competitors, whatever's different or special or unique about you better be singing loud and clear, high above the heavens. Because otherwise, it's just a fruit. All right? Who are we after? What do they care about? What's compelling to them? And how's it different? Finally, how do we deliver it? Here's the way you know if your scope is too big. Okay? Like any one of these things. If your delivery expectations seem unrealistic, if you cannot put together a timely release, all right, if you're constantly battling these, well, can't we also have this, all right, feature creep, scope creep, call it whatever you want. Well, can't we do this? Can't it do this? Can't it do this? Can't it do this? If your designers and developers are nervous, your scope is way too big. If it's too small, no one really knows what the full vision looks like or how you're going to get there, right? You know you got this end in sight. You said, we got to be at alpha by, December 22nd. Nobody has any clue how we're going to get there, all right? And your releases in and of themselves are kind of nothing to write home about, right? Version 2 isn't really any better than version 1, version 2.1, version 2.3. You don't feel like you're getting anywhere, right? Whether you'll admit this or not out loud, you'll know it in your gut. You'll feel it, believe me. It's the stuff that keeps you up at night. So if you haven't clarified scope, this is what you wind up with. So the place to start is, again, with strategy. Strategy informs user experience. All right? What's customer experience? And that is defined by things like this. All right? When I work with a client, from a user experience and even a user interface standpoint, when you're reviewing an existing product, I'd say 80 to 90% of the work is done on a whiteboard. It's not what it looks like. It's not the prototype, although the prototype certainly plays a role, right? We're looking at stuff. But you're doing this, all right? You got to dig through the nuts and bolts of everything that you're doing. That overall experience has to be driven by business goals and customer needs. Again, although maybe I didn't say this, the thing I hate about the term user experience is that it specifically has user in it. Okay? User experience is more, it's about more than just users. It's about the sweet spot, all right, where user needs and business goals meet each other. Those are your opportunities for differentiation, okay? You got to know your customer, and you have to absolutely remember that they are not you. User experience, on the other hand, informs design. Again, notice, we're at a whiteboard. But we're starting to get into, well, what happens? What actions take place? And how does that manifest itself on the screen? But we're still not really designing anything. We're just working through it. Right? What level of visual engagement, what level of communication, what level of feedback do people need? How do they move through it? And does it make sense? Not just from a logical standpoint, from a human standpoint, from a personal standpoint. How do they use this in context with everything else that they're doing? Probably at the same time. All right? How much feedback do we need? User actions, system actions. Right? What happens? Every time I take an action as a user, what happens as a result? From there, design informs everything else. And again, design's a big term. We're not just talking about visual design. We're talking about strategy, we're talking about user experience, we're talking about software architecture, we're talking about engineering, we're talking about user interface design, we're talking about all sorts of things, right? But design is design. So it starts with content, right? Volume, order, priority, labeling, how the navigation works, how things are ordered and segregated, and then you go through the process, right? Do it, test it, revise it, and do it again. So, how am I doing on time?
Good. Got 2 more minutes.
Excellent. So the takeaways, I want you to come away with are this, all right? When you're inconsistent in some way and it's sort of things aren't well integrated and you don't have a coherent customer user experience on the receiving end, it gets exposed. And part of the reason it gets exposed is just because partly just the geography has disappeared. Everybody is this close together, right? We're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook. We're all close together and we're talking all the time. Information is being exchanged, shared, manipulated, mashed, you know. So you'll see it. When it comes out, you'll know immediately. Unless you get the user experience and customer experience right, ROI is a very hard thing to come by. Right? It shocks me to no end that for as much lip service as user and customer experience get, aside from Fast Company, and all major business publications and all major technology trade publications and everybody, things of that ilk, no one's talking about this. And it's the most important part. Because if people don't want what you've got, it doesn't matter how great it is. All right? It's like everybody, you know, this thing about first to market. We got to be first to market, first to market, first to market. If you're first to market and you suck, it doesn't matter. 9 times out of 10, it's second to market who winds up owning it. You know why? Because someone else has already made all the mistakes. People want what they want, okay? And because there's a plethora of choices, we want it when we want it, how we want it, and we want it the way we want it delivered. It's a tall order for all of you folks who are out there trying to, you know, create things. It's tough. You're up against a very sort of tall wall. Because people are fickle. You know, and we'll spend about 10 seconds playing with something, and the first time you disappoint me, I'm gone. I don't have time to check out the rest of it. Sad, but true. The right solution isn't possible unless you're asking the right questions and you're solving the right problems. All right, and that all starts with the strategy part. Spend time on it. Even when you're going through the other machinations, keep coming back to strategy. Does our strategy still make sense? Based on what we know in the design phase or in the development phase, does our strategy still make sense? Keep checking yourself. You've got to have internal agreement on what that is. What's needed, who it's for, why it's necessary, how you're going to do it. Come on in. And here's the other thing, and this always, I see people get uncomfortable when I say this, but too bad. You cannot create appropriate, what's the word I want, truly valuable ROI producing user experience unless you have a professional doing it. Okay? As an entrepreneur, do you know your product? Absolutely. At least you better. Do you know your target market? Probably. If you've done the research and you feel like, yeah, I've done the work, I know this inside and out. Are you a subject matter expert? Absolutely. You need these people to help you translate that into something valuable. Doesn't mean it has to be expensive. It just means you have to get somebody on your team who knows this inside and out. If I had a dime for every company I've seen fail because they insisted they could do it themselves, I wouldn't be here talking. I'd be on an island somewhere sipping a drink right now. All right? It's like me trying to do electrician work. I can do it, but guess what? I suck at it. And I've zapped myself more than once. Not a good use of my time. Final thing is this. And this isn't mine, but I love it. Okay? And I think it applies to everything you're going to hear tonight because it's all very good advice from people who absolutely know what they're talking about. I don't mean me, I mean the other people. You can make money or you can make excuses, but you absolutely positively cannot do both. That was the best piece of advice anyone ever gave me, and it is very true. Thanks for your time.